Solon's ideal of righteousness of the person and of the commonwealth would have worked as an example for the whole Greek society, which could have united the Greeks as a nation if Athens didn't return to being led by tyrants. If Athens could have sorted out the well-being of itself and its allies, who knows what wonderful things could have come. Solon lived during the early part of the 6th century BC. The 50 years after his death was a time of struggle between Athenian tyrants and Spartan takeover. Finally, in the late 6th century BC, a nobleman named Cleisthenes created a revised Athenian constitution that was influenced by Solon and was very democratic. Cleisthenes, in following Solon's writings closely, distributed powers carefully to promote unanimity among Athenians, so to preserve the state, while Athens immediately benefited and was just beginning to make goodwill towards its neighbors. The Greeks were then put to the sword by the Persians in the east and the Carthaginians in the west. This era of warfare essentially ended the period of goodwill and possible long-term unity among the various Greek city-states. Miraculously, military unity did lead to victory of the Greek people over the Persians and the Carthaginians. And it also began what became known as the Great Age of the ancient Greeks. But this period, unfortunately, only lasted 70 to 75 years. This Great Age of Greece was a very democratic period for many city-states surrounding Athens. However, it was Athens itself, the most democratic of all Greek city-states, that bears the heaviest responsibility for the cause of the Peloponnesian War, which essentially ended what could have become of ancient Greece. The Peloponnesian War lasted from 431 to 404 BC. It began as a result of the Greco-Persian Wars that were fought earlier from 499 to 449 BC. Athens and Sparta then combined their efforts to repel King Xerxes' invasion of Greece. Sparta initially led the Greek city-states, but due to rumors of treachery, many Greek city-states transferred their allegiance to Athens, which formed the Delian League. Well, Athens molded the Delian League into a type of empire, which essentially ended the democratic running of Athens. Now, getting a lot of money from its neighboring city-states to build up a united Greek defense, Athens started to build up its grandiose buildings, temples, and statues. Sparta became concerned with Athens' greed and empire-like growth. So, the Spartans took advantage of the conflict that just arose between Athens and Corinth and used that conflict to start the Peloponnesian War, which Athens eventually lost. If Athens could have maintained righteous order in the democratic commonwealth that it had formed, then the Peloponnesian War would likely have never occurred. Puffed up by pride and greed, afflicted by that arrogance which the Greeks called hubris, the Athenian democracy abandoned Solon's righteousness for the prizes of empire. Once the Athenians turned to greed, they essentially abolished the checks upon their popular sovereignty, and political power was taken over by Athenian commercial interests, essentially the shipping traders who partnered with the navy. The smaller city-states, which had been Athens' allies, were reduced to servitude, and thus began to see Athens as a tyrant city. The noble Athenian democracy had become rash, selfish, and merciless, devastating its allies and neutral states. The immense squandering of its resources for extravagant undertakings led Athens to turn to becoming demagogues in leadership who focused on self-seeking adventures. The once noble popular government had become discredited, and its allies no longer saw anything that Athens promoted as a worthy cause. As a result, most of the Greek city-states became, independent again and fell under easy attack. This result of the Greeks immediately makes one recall the warnings of Solon against the appetite of excessive wealth, both individually and as a society. The decay of the righteous order that Solon had described in his poems led to the fall of Athens, essentially. As a result, many years later, the imagination and intellect of several Athenians turned them to asking if righteousness could be regained. And this is exactly what Socrates and his disciples of Plato and Aristotle focused so strongly upon during their time in post-age Athens.